You know how people often wonder, if they bumped into an old friend or an old flame and wonder if they would recapture the magic that they once had? I found myself thinking about that recently when I bumped into this old friend of mine, the Line 6 Pod. We had a lot of good years together making some pretty good music, but we eventually drifted apart. But thought I'd plug it in and see if we can recapture some of that old magic. If you want to see how an old pod is bean, get it, bean, then join me for this episode of I Don't Have a Band right now. Hey there, I'm Dan, the self-proclaimed Lonely Rocker. Thanks for joining me for I Don't Have a Band. In this episode, I'm going to continue a theme that I started recently where I rummage through my storage and pull out old pieces of gear that I haven't used in a long time, review it again and see if it's something that I'd buy all over again. In a recent episode, I took a look at the Rat distortion pedal. If you want to check it out, there's a link to that video in the description below. In this episode, I'm going to take a look at my old Line 6 Pod. This is version 2 of the Pod that came out around 2000. Now, Line 6 didn't invent amp modeling, but their innovations have created products that are staples today, even for professionals. For me, I used to record at home. I had a video editing setup, and this was long before I called it a home studio, but I just like to capture different ideas. And this was a great device. I didn't even have an audio interface. I plugged into this, went straight into the line in on my computer, and I was recording my guitar. And the sounds were pretty incredible. Now, the technology in the Pod sort of predates what's now become standards in the industry, even for professionals, like the Helix platform. I recently reviewed the HX Stomp, but it all started back with devices like the Pod. I did a little research for this video and discovered some things that I never even used. And I'm curious if it's something that has held up after all these years and to see perhaps if it's something that I would consider buying all over again if I didn't have one. So why don't we jump in and take a look at the Line 6 Pod. Line 6 began in 1996 with their first modeling amplifier. The Axis 212 was the first guitar amplifier with onboard software modeling that can simulate the effects of various tube amplifiers. It provided unprecedented access to different tones, opening up a whole new world for guitar players. Over the next couple of years, Line 6 continued to develop this technology and deliver it in different types of products, ranging from amp heads, combos, foot controllers, and plugins. 1998 saw Line 6 release version 1 of the Pod. The now famous kidney bean-shaped device was revolutionary. It delivered 16 amp models, 16 effects, and various speaker cabinet emulations, all in an extremely portable device. It was an incredible practice device when used with headphones, or it can be connected to an external amp or PA system, or used to record direct. In 1999 saw Line 6 continue to develop a wide range of products. An honorable mention goes to the DL4 stereo delay modeler that features 16 classic delay and echo models. I still have this on my board today. 2000 saw Line 6 introduce the Pod 2.0. This is the version I have. It doubled the count of amp models to 32, added interchangeable cab models, preset compatibility with other Line 6 devices, as well as faster preset switching. Line 6 also introduced the rack-mountable Pod Pro, Bass Pod, and Bass Pod Pro. If I was to cover the full product line between 2000 and 2020, this video would be 2 hours long. But Line 6 continued to develop and innovate, improving their modeling technology with each new product release. Some highlights include their multi-stomp box modelers, hybrid tube and modeling amplifiers, and modeling guitars. this history wouldn't be complete without mentioning a modern game changer. The Helix platform launched in 2015. Top pros have since adopted this technology, leaving their tube amps at home. The flexibility and realism of these devices has helped change the way many guitarists now approach live gigs and recording. But it all started back in the early days through developments in devices like this old red kidney bean. So I thought that was a little fun to take a look at the history of Line 6. It's pretty amazing. I've always felt Line 6 on the fringe in terms of my life, but it's not exactly true because I've owned a number of Line 6 products, this being the first, as I mentioned, the DL4, delay modeler pedal, even the Sonic port. I bought that later, something you can plug into your iPad. So Line 6 has been a fixture in my life for many years, and I never really thought about it, so pretty amazing. Anyways, back to the pod itself. One thing I'll say, sort of as an early observation here, is that the pod sounds really good in your headphones. Now, as a recording tool, what you heard in those examples, straight out from the pod into the interface. I didn't do any EQing or nothing, that was straight out. So I wanted you to hear sort of the raw sounds coming out of the unit. Listening to it in headphones, it's far more submersive for sure. And I don't think that's conveyed well in the video, but it gives you an idea of some of the things it can do, and also maybe revealing some of the limitations by today's standards. This particular one came out in the year 2000, the original one in 1998, and then this small kidney bean configuration having 32 amp models in this little unit was pretty amazing. So I do want to put that into perspective. However, we are looking at this to see if it's something I'd be interested in purchasing today. So when I first used this unit, I kind of used it stock. I never really sort of dove deep into the unit. I'm pretty savvy with computers and I'm very visual. And as much as you have a lot of onboard features here, which is really good, I ended up using what I could see. The things that it didn't really catch my eye right away just sort of never got used. So for example, I had a number of patches that I grew to like, and I would just cycle through. Anyways, I would cycle through the patches here, which are built-in effects, amp models, and different effects. Got flangers, chorus, tremolo effects, and things like that. The thing about the device is if you go and just turn something, then suddenly you're into manual mode, and I think it switches over to the settings that are on the dials. So you can switch through the different amps. But one thing that I didn't know then, if I look closely on the unit, I did some research, as I said before this video, but shooting some of the product shots, and I noticed here it says the amp model 7 to 32, and I was like, all you got to do to access those is hold the hold button. Anyways, you need a cheat sheet to know what they are. So as cool as that is, unless I have a manual in front of me, I don't really know what they are. So you could go off your ear. But another thing that I didn't notice as well, so let's just go back here and I'll just choose the Brit high gain. I guess that's a Marshall. On the effects side, and something I didn't notice before is you can actually select your cabinets. So if you hold down hold as well, you know, you've got 412s and 112s and things like that. 212. And a 112, and what do we got here? 412. But something that's really, really interesting that I noticed here is you can actually turn the cab simulation off. Now, for those of you guys using a DI or things like that, I've got a Torpedo Captor 8, so I can record my tube amp straight into my computer, bypassing the speakers or the onboard speaker simulator, and record that straight into my computer, and then use the wall of sound plugin to choose my cabs. You can turn the cabinet off here. Now that sounds pretty bad, but it's designed to be that way, and because that's the straight amp model. And it kind of blows my mind a little bit, because I wouldn't have even understood that concept back in the day. I mean, today with IRs and things, it's become standard issue. It's pretty new for me. But even back then, in the early days of amp modeling, they did think about it in terms of the amp and the effect of the speaker on the amp, as opposed to just crafting some digital versions of amplifier sounds. And that completely blows my mind, because it just shows you how far ahead Line 6 was back in the day in developing this amp modeling technology. It's been sitting in my house for almost 20 years and I never even looked at it. So, but if you have one of these, you could actually, choose your head, bypass the speaker simulation here, and then use IRs. That would be an interesting option, and see how that sounds. I don't want to go too deep. There's a lot of things I could do with that, but which is something that I discovered. Now, whether or not I would buy this again today, if I didn't have one, and I was looking to pick up something like this, I'm going to have to chew on that, and I'll let you know in the wrap-up. Well, it was great catching up with an old friend. I really do have fond memories of using the pod. But the question is it something that I would buy today? While I think the sounds have held up pretty good, there's a couple of reasons why I wouldn't buy this model. Now, I did look around on eBay and places like that, and you can find an old pod version 2 between $70 and $200. I think someone's got to be really nostalgic to spend $200 on this. There's a lot more modern versions of this particular unit, but really the question will come down to, would I buy one of these? Now, the fact that I have it, I'm going to try and use it as a practice tool, but there's really two main problems that I think are going to limit my use of this device. Number one, it doesn't have an auxiliary input. When I'm practicing guitar, I often like to have backing tracks, or perhaps I'm, learning popular songs and things like that. And I mean, I can do it down here in my studio, but if I set this up, let's say upstairs in my living room, and if I'm just vegging out on the couch, I can't plug in my phone or an MP3 player into this because there's no auxiliary input. So while I do have a ton of great sounds that will really sound great in my headphones, I just can't get another sound source into the unit. The other thing is that as portable as this device is, it isn't really that portable because it doesn't take batteries. The power supply is quite bulky. If I'm traveling, for example, and I want to bring a guitar and maybe a little, bring something along so I can play guitar, I need a power source. I need to plug it in. It doesn't take batteries. Now, the modern version of the pod, there's the Pocket Pod, which sells for under $200, depending on what market you're in. It's a lot smaller. It houses all of this technology plus more, and there's an auxiliary input and things like that. But really the question comes down to, would I buy this particular unit today? And I'd say probably if I found one and I didn't have one, I would probably pass, even for 50 bucks or 70 bucks, like I said, because it's missing some key features for me. But I would consider buying a new one. Anyways, I hope you found that interesting and fun. Are you a pod owner yourself? Have you had experience with one? I would love to hear your thoughts. I got tons of stuff going on my channel, whether it's revolving around my home studio, guitars, gear, software. I do a ton of reviews. Would always love to hear your thoughts about anything I'm doing. Certainly throw your suggestions in the comments. If you really want to support my channel, I am on Patreon. There's a link to all of my information in the description below. And above all else, I hope I'll see you again in another video. As always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And please like, subscribe, and ring that bell to stay up to date. Remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. There are a lot of great musical projects you can do by yourself, right from your own home. I hope to see you again next time.